Crowds ring in 2023 with fireworks, fetes and hope for an end to 2022 challenges. Around the world, cheering crowds for a moment cast off shadow of war, pandemic. Throngs of people celebrated New Year's Eve, filling squares and gathering places around the world after 2 years of COVID disruptions in the waning hours of a year marked by the war in Ukraine, economic stresses and the effects of global warming. With countdowns and fireworks, revelers in major city centers across the Asia-Pacific region ushered in the new year, many free of COVID-19 restrictions for the first time since the pandemic began in 2020. Lockdowns in 2020 and a surge in Omicron cases at the end of 2021 limited crowds and celebrations. While COVID-19 continues to cause death and dismay particularly in China, which is battling a nationwide infection surge in infections after a sudden ease of restrictions, many countries have lifted quarantine requirements, restrictions for visitors and frequent testing. People celebrated at the Great Wall in Beijing, while in Shanghai authorities stopped traffic to allow pedestrians to gather. Shanghai Disneyland held special fireworks to welcome 2023. Rigorous COVID restrictions only lifted this month in China with the government's reversal of its zero-COVID policy, followed by soaring infections, adding a dour note to celebrations for some. This virus should just go and die. Cannot believe this year I cannot even find a healthy friend that can go out with me and celebrate the passage into the new year, wrote one social media user based in eastern Shandong province. Others expressed hope the new year would herald China's return to pre-pandemic life. I lived and worked under COVID throughout 2022. I hope 2023 is when everything can go back to what it was before 2020, said one user based in the neighboring province of Jiangsu. In the city of Wuhan, where the pandemic began 3 years ago, tens of thousands of people gathered to celebrate amid a heavy security presence. Barricades were erected and hundreds of police officers and other security workers stood guard on the night of the first large-scale spontaneous gathering in the city since nationwide protests in late November. Officers shuttled people away from at least one popular New Year's Eve gathering point and used loudspeakers at various locations, blasting out a short message on a loop advising people not to gather. Reunions in Ukraine. On the last day of a year marked by the brutal war in Ukraine, many in the country returned to the capital Kiev to spend New Year's Eve with their loved ones before Reuters reported that blasts were heard after midnight and air raid sirens began to wail across Ukraine. Russia attacks have continued to target power supplies, leaving millions without electricity, so no big celebrations were had and a curfew was in place as the clock rang in the new year. Still wearing his military uniform, Mikita gripped a bouquet of pink roses tightly as he waited for his wife Valeria to arrive from Poland on Platform 9. He hadn't seen her in 6 months. It actually was really tough, to wait so long, he told the Associated Press after hugging and kissing Valeria. The couple declined to share their family name for security reasons, as Mikita has been fighting on the front lines in both South and East Ukraine. Asked what their New Year's Eve plans were, Valeria answered simply, "Just to be together." Reuters reported that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Saturday predicted victory in the war against Russia next year. Zelensky made the forecast in a short written message. "Today there is only one wish. And it will come true not by a miracle but through our work, our struggle, mutual aid, and humanity," he said. Happy New Year. The year of our victory. Zelensky alluded to repeated Russian strikes that have smashed the power generating system, saying light could be found in everyone, even when there was no electricity. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin used a 9-minute New Year's address to the nation to accuse Western countries of aggression and trying to use the conflict in Ukraine to undermine Moscow. Putin made the video address, shown on state television on Saturday in each of Russia's 11 time zones, from a military headquarters with soldiers in the background, a sharp departure from his previous practice of recording the message against the backdrop of the snowy Kremlin, according to Associated Press. It was a year of difficult, necessary decisions, the most important steps toward gaining full sovereignty of Russia and powerful consolidation of our society, Putin said, echoing his repeated contention that Moscow had no choice but to send troops into Ukraine because it threatened Russia's security. Ukraine on people's minds. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issued a short New Year's tribute Saturday urging Canadians to give thanks for the country's strong economic recovery, and stoicism in the face of COVID and the war in Ukraine. This year also had challenges, but when things got hard, we were there for each other. We have been there to support the people of Ukraine as they bravely defend their country. French President Emmanuel Macron delivered a televised message and spoke of the Ukraine war several times. Macron also promised support for Ukrainian friends, saying, "During the coming year, we will be unfailingly at your side. We will help you until victory and we will be together to build a just and lasting peace." Concerns about Russia's war in Ukraine and the economic shocks it has spawned across the globe were felt in Tokyo as well, where Shigeki Kawamura lined up for a free hot meal. "I hope the war will be over in Ukraine so prices will stabilize," he said. "Nothing good has happened for the people since we've had Mr. Kishida," he said, referring to Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Dazzling celebration in Sydney. Australia celebrated its first restriction-free New Year's Eve after 2 years of COVID disruptions. Sydney, one of the world's first major cities to welcome in the new year, did so with a typically dazzling fireworks display. A rainbow waterfall and more than 7,000 fireworks were launched from the top of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. More than 1 million people flocked to Sydney's waterfront for the celebration. "It is the party Sydney deserves," Stephen Gilby, the city's producer of major events and festivals, told the Sydney Morning Herald. "We have had a couple of fairly difficult years. We're absolutely delighted this year to be able to welcome people back to the foreshores of Sydney Harbour for Sydney's world-famous New Year's Eve celebrations," he said. The Pacific nation of Kiribati was the first country to greet the new year, with the clock ticking into 2023 1 hour ahead of neighbours including New Zealand. In Auckland, large crowds gathered below the Sky Tower, where a 10-second countdown to midnight preceded a fireworks display. Somber celebrations. In Rome, New Year's Eve began on a somber note as the Vatican announced the death of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, the German theologian who will be remembered as the first pope in 600 years to resign. He was 95. Turkey's most populous city, Istanbul, rang in 2023 with street festivities and fireworks. At St. Antoine Catholic Church on Istanbul's popular pedestrian thoroughfare Istiklal Avenue, dozens of Christians prayed for the new year and marked former Pope Benedict XVI's passing. Meanwhile, California is welcoming the new year with a powerful storm that's drenching the state with rain or snowfall, snarling traffic, and closing highways. It's making New Year's a bit treacherous in parts of the state as an atmospheric river storm fans a vast plume of moisture from the Pacific Ocean, threatening flooding and rock slides. The National Weather Service has issued warnings about hazardous driving conditions in Sacramento, where vehicles need chains or four-wheel drive for mountain passes. South of Yosemite National Park to north of Lake Tahoe, as much as 1.5 meters of snow is expected by the first day of 2023. First pope in 600 years to resign. He was 95. Turkey's most populous city, Istanbul, rang in 2023 with street festivities and fireworks. At St. Antoine Catholic Church on Istanbul's popular pedestrian thoroughfare Istiklal Avenue, dozens of Christians prayed for the new year and marked former Pope Benedict XVI's passing. Meanwhile, California is welcoming the new year with a powerful storm that's drenching the state with rain or snowfall, snarling traffic, and closing highways. It's making New Year's a bit treacherous in parts of the state as an atmospheric river storm fans a vast plume of moisture from the Pacific Ocean, threatening flooding and rock slides. The National Weather Service has issued warnings about hazardous driving conditions in Sacramento, where vehicles need chains or four-wheel drive for mountain passes. South of Yosemite National Park to north of Lake Tahoe, as much as 1.5 meters of snow is expected by the first day of 2023. To north of Lake Tahoe, as much as 1.5 meters of snow is expected by the first day of 2023.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.